Hello BookTube, welcome to LizziefayeLovesBooks. I'm Elizabeth, and today I'd like to share with you what I read in the month of November. I want to kind of give you a few stats and tell you a little bit about the fiction books that I read in this video, and then because I participated in Nonfiction November, I'm going to do a separate video to tell you all about the nonfiction books that I read and which of the challenges that each of those books met. So for the fiction books, I finished a total of 8 during the month of November, but I had 3 other fiction books that I started in November that I have now finished during this first week of December. So I'm going to go ahead and include those in this wrap up because for December I'm predominantly reading Christmas books. So I just want to go ahead and, since these were intended to be November reads anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about all 11. And the same goes for my nonfiction. Because I participated in Nonfiction November, I'm going to do a separate video of those books, and I finished a total of 10 nonfiction books during the month of November, and I had 2 others that I have been working on this first week of December, and I'll talk about all 12 of those in that video. So the total amount of books that I finished in November was 18, and then I had another 5 that still hanging over into the beginning of December, but as I said, I'm going to talk about all of those in my between the 2 November wrap-up videos. So as far as the fiction goes, I listened to 7 of them. 7 of them were audiobooks and 4 of them were physical books. 2 of them were from the same series, and I finished that series. 2 of them were mystery books, 3 of them were YA or middle grade, and then 5 of them were women's fiction, Christian fiction. Only 1 of them was Christian fiction, and all of them would probably be considered women's fiction. And then 1 dystopian, and it was on audio. So let's get started. I'll start with the women's fiction, and I lost my train of thought, but anyway, we'll start with the women's fiction. I finished the Rose Harbor series by Debbie Maycomber. This is a wonderful series, a spin-off series of the Cedar Cove series by the same author, and it takes place in the same town, and a few of the characters from Cedar Cove are woven in, but it's predominantly about Jo Marie Rose. She's recently widowed and has opened a bed and breakfast, so it's her story woven throughout all of the books. There are 5 books and 3 novellas, and now have finished all of them. This is the 5th book, Sweet Tomorrows. I also finished Silver Linings at the beginning of the month. I had started it in October and finished it up early in November. Then, as well as the storylines, follow Jo Marie Rose, who's the owner, and then also the stories of her guests as different guests come and go in each of the books. Then you get a little variety of storylines coming and going throughout the books. So both of them were really good. If you are interested in this series, I would start at the beginning. You do not have to read the Cedar Cove series to read this series. They are just set in the same town, and there's a couple of people who come in and out, but they're not absolutely, you don't have to know their history to be able to appreciate this book and this series. So I highly recommend it. Debbie Maycomber is a wonderful author. Then, and those were narrated by Lorelei King. I believe that whole series was narrated by her. Then the rest of these are books that I read in print. I read Miss Scarlett's School of Patternless Sewing by Kathy Cano Murillo. This was a lot of fun, very unique. It is set in the fashion industry, and also the characters are all Latina and Latino, and just very interesting story. There was some tragedy. There was several things going on at once. There was a little bit of mystery involved, and the very first scene in the prologue happened, and then it switches gears very quickly, and you meet some more characters, and then it kind of switches gears again, and you meet some other characters, and you don't really understand how it all ties together. Really, you don't understand how all of it ties together until the very end, but that's kind of the fun of it, the mystery of it. But I thought it was a really good book. I enjoyed reading it. Then I also read a tiny little book by T. Davis Bunn called The Gift. This is a book that I realized I had 2 copies of. I hadn't planned to read it this month, but when I realized I had 2 copies, earlier in the month, well, actually November 1st, my mother-in-law had called me and wanted to take me to lunch. So I thought, I remembered a book that I had gotten at a book sale that I was going to give her. So I picked that up and I thought, well, this isn't really enough. And so I remembered I had 2 copies of this, and I thought, I'll give her the extra copy of this. And then I scrounged up another book that I had 2 of, and I kind of put together a little gift package for her, and forgot to give them to her that day. I know it was my birthday, but still, her love language is gifts, and I wanted to give her those, and I forgot. So the next day, I was somewhere, and I had waiting time, and you guys, I almost never leave the house without a book. Every once in a while, I will accidentally do that, and I had forgotten to bring the book that I was reading. So I looked in the back seat of the car, and here was this book. So I grabbed it, and this is what I read. So now I'm done with both copies. I have given another copy to my mother-in-law, and I finished this one. So I'm going to be passing this one on to, actually to one of my subscribers. It's as part of my book sharing book unhaul, which is very nearing completion. I am just about getting ready to get those all sent out. So this was good. There's another little book by T. Davis Bunn called The Quilt that I liked much better. This is a Christian book. It has the Christian message. It is about 2 women in a hospital room. One is older and more wizened, and she's a strong Christian. The other one is younger, high-powered, career woman who is just all out of balance and everything. And so it's a classic case of an older woman mentoring a younger woman. They're sort of captive together in this hospital room, and it was really good. There's also a little bit of a romance involved between the younger woman and then the older woman's son, and who comes to visit and everything. Actually, he's the one who rescued the young woman. How she even got in the hospital, her shoe got caught in an escalator, and it twisted and broke her ankle. And so now she's in the hospital in traction. But the hospital was overloaded, and so because this man's mother was in the hospital, she had a private room, and because there was no other rooms in the hospital, she offered to share her room with this woman. And so that's kind of how the story starts out. So that was good. And then one other one I just finished a couple of days ago. This is one of the ones that carried over into December, but I had intended to finish it in November. I just couldn't get it done. This is my first Miss Read book. I have been wanting to start this series, or any of the books by Miss Read, for a long time. She's known for the Thrush Green series as well as the Fair Acre series. I know a couple of you are reading Christmas at Fair Acre this year. I haven't started the Fair Acre series yet. This is the very first one of the Thrush Green books. It was delightful. It's very slow. So you guys, if you're looking for a book that's action-packed, this is not your book. I mean, almost nothing happens of any excitement at all. It's endearing, and it's sweet, and it's wonderful. It's old-fashioned. Oh, it's my kind of book. It really is. And it is an English village, countryside. The fair has come to town. The whole book takes place on May 1st, which is the day every year that this traveling caravan of, I guess, gypsies, they're called in here. It's a traveling carnival kind of a group, and they come on the first day of May every year to this little town. And so it's about all the excitement that's happening with that, and you meet the characters from the caravan, and you also meet the characters from the town, and how they relate together, and it's really wonderful. It just really is. So then moving on, I listened to one dystopian book. I listened to The Circle by Dave Eggers. Let's see, this was narrated by Dion Graham. Yes, Dion Graham narrated this. This is basically social media gone awry. Social media is kind of taken over, and this one particular company is sort of the spearhead of it all, and everyone is basically expected to share everything and photograph everything, videotape everything, post it. There's no privacy anymore, and everyone's expected to a lot of people are expected to be transparent and show it all. And it's kind of scary because we're almost getting to that point right now. I thought it was very interesting. There were a couple little parts I didn't care for, mainly because my daughter wants to read it. She's 13, and there's a couple of kind of graphic sex scenes, and I just don't know if I'm comfortable with her reading that yet. I told her, I said, well, I did read it ahead of her, and I said, if you are going to be determined to read this, we're going to have some more talks, so just know that. But anyway, we both want to see the movie, and so we had to get the book first. All right, then I listened to 2 mysteries, and these are not my cozy mysteries, you guys. These are like full-out mainstream mysteries, because we just started a mystery book club at our public library. I say we. I didn't really have anything to do with starting it, but I was asked to participate and join in. I am a part of our regular book club that we have there, and I'm one of the biggest readers at our local library. So the guy who was facilitating it, asked me if I would be able to join in. And so the very first book we read is Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I didn't quite get it finished in time for book club, but then the audiobook came the very next day, so I listened to it entirely, and so did my husband, and hopefully we will get to see the movie while it's still out there. We may miss it in the theater, but we'll definitely watch it on DVD if nothing else. We both enjoyed it. I had listened to this an abridged version on audio couple of years ago, and I was thinking that I had a pretty good memory of it, but I realized I was mixing it up with 450 from Paddington, so that ends a whole different way. And so this book was very interesting, very good. To me, still my favorite book by Agatha Christie is And Then There Were None, but this is really good. So then the next selection for our mystery book club is this, The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith. And they actually met last night to discuss this book, and I had to work. I couldn't get off to go to it, but I did type up some thoughts and some notes. I did finish the book, and I sent those. I dropped them off at the library yesterday during the day and said, I can't come to book club. Here's my thoughts. And I like the character of Cormoran Strike and Robin. I really like Robin, but that's about it. I didn't care for the other side characters, all the people they interviewed. There's just too much foul language for me. I just don't care for it, especially when you have characters that just use the F word for every part of speech. So that grated on my nerves because I was listening to it on audio, and of course, it's assaulting my senses whenever he's talking to any of those characters. And I got done with it and, found out who the murderer was and everything. And the really big question I had was why. I didn't understand the motive for the murder. And I didn't understand the motive for what the murderer did after, I guess is a good way to put it without giving spoilers. So anyway, it's not a book I would have ever picked up on my own. I doubt I'll ever read any more of the series, but at least now I can say I read it and I know what it's about. So there's that. Then our next selection is going to be The Woman in Cabin 10. I've got it here on audio by Ruth Ware and narrated by Imogene Church. I hope this one's not as full of foul language as Cuckoo's Calling. If it is, goodness, I just don't know if I can participate in Mystery Book Club much longer. The sad thing is that our facilitator, the library staff member who wanted to start this, he hates cozy mysteries. He does not have any interest in reading cozy mysteries. And of course, y'all, that's my thing. So, I don't know. We may differ too much with the reading selections. I'm going to give it a few months and see if I could find some redeeming qualities from the books that we read. But, I don't know. I'm starting to worry. So then, the 3 books that were either about or for young people, I listened to again on audio The Hobbit. I have this little wooden box with cassette tapes. I explained why I pulled out the cassette tapes on the video that I did I guess Thanksgiving weekend. I was driving my husband's car. We went on a little camping trip before Thanksgiving. He drove the motorhome. I drove the car. He drives a 2000 Ford Explorer, which happens to still have a cassette deck, which I love. And so I listened to this in addition to The Circle, because his CD player kind of works on and off. So I would listen to one disc of this, and then I would put in a tape from The Hobbit, and I listened to that. Now that was a dramatized version. It has multiple narrators, a full cast who did the voice acting in that, and it is, I believe, abridged. So I still do want to go back and reread The Hobbit. I've got the really cool annotated version, and that was the reason I even thought of that to begin with, is because I was going to read the annotated version in November, and it just didn't happen. So I picked that up instead. Then the last two fiction books, I listened to on audio The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. I had not ever read or listened to this before. I also did turn through the book and enjoyed the art by Ellen Forney. I had kind of an oh my moment this morning, though. I was kind of getting ready, preparing for this video, and I looked up Ellen Forney just to see what else she had illustrated, and she has some erotic comic books. And I didn't look any further. I just looked at the list and thought, oh my. So anyway, to each his own, right? But the artwork in here is really good. I felt like this book was very honest and open. It does have some crude teenage boy humor. There is one really bad racist joke, but I feel like the book is probably really realistic. I think it is partly autobiographical, even though the main character is not Sherman Alexie. It's another boy who likes to draw, and he's bullied. He is from the reservation and goes to a white school, and it's just a really good book. I enjoyed it. Even though there's a little bit of bad language and crude humor and all that, I was warned going into it. I knew that was coming, and it wasn't excessive. And I'm glad that I read it. I had heard a lot about it, so I'm excited that I read it. And then the very last book I just finished this morning, finally. I've been trying to read this book for like 3 or 4 years, y'all. My daughter Katie wanted me to read it. She has just blown through this whole series when she was younger and loved it. The Warriors series by Aaron Hunter. This is the very first book, Into the Wild. It's about a house cat who decides he is going to give up his pampered ways and join up with a feral cat colony, and it's a fantasy book about all these feral cats and their different clans and how they relate to each other and their battles and their relationships, and it's just really fascinating. So I am super excited that I read this finally, and we've got most of these books in our house. I may just keep reading, maybe not this month, but I think I may read some more of these. I really enjoyed it. So that is it. That is everything that I read in the fiction department for November, and I will be coming back within the next couple of days with a wrap up of my nonfiction books. And I guess that's it for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.